Periscope. Where's the beans? Oh no! Submerge it. Where can I can't find my beans. Make some noise, fellow beans.
Captain, they're all dead.
That's apparently the sound of beans sounding off, which is not a metaphor for farting, but rather us making sounds with our mouth holes. Welcome, beans. I am one of you, Abe Epperson, and I'm joined by my best pal and career co-pilot,
Mr. Michael Swaim.
Yeah!
Bean, sounding off your beaniancy.
And with us this time is a bean of note, notable bean, and friend of the podcast. Introduce yourself, guest.
Cristian Ramirez.
Hey!
Get
Welcome
'em.
back.
So
God.
many people all the ships at sea just tuned in.
Woo!
Just
Hell yeah.
sonar ready. This podcast was brought to you by the Small Beans Pick the Flick tier, where you within only a few clicks can determine what film we cover on this podcast. And this month we'd like to thank Aaron, Defender of the Galaxy, who has chosen
Ooh,
The Hunt for the Red October. Also,
for Red
he has made a
October.
request
Yeah.
for us to dedicate this podcast to his mom, who took him to see PG movies, but would not let him watch PG-13 movies. And I believe Hunt for Red October is PG, so this obviously being one of those.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, shout out to Mom.
From this 3-bean salad to your mama.
Mm-hmm.
Nod.
Salad.
Not Kurt, nod as we pass in the cramped corridor, pretending it's not awkward.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Thank
Sub
you,
life.
Aaron, Defender of the Galaxy. All right, we're here. We're recording. We're making our bean sounds on 1990s Tom Clancy adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah, dropping that metaphor. Great. Okay. Hey, Cristian, thanks for
Yeah.
being here. Always so good to talk to you, buddy. And people who've listened to the podcast for a long time know that you've served. Thank you for your service, sir.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I want to start the conversation there for no reason. Abe hates me so much right now. I always love just throwing out a random question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that apply to the movie at all? As you watch the movie, is that a lens you tap into?
I mean, yeah, sometimes for sure. Just the way that military decorum and things like that. Of course, because they're in the Navy, in a sub in this particular movie, most of it taking place on board one of the two subs that are the Americans or the Russians, respectively. I think for a lot of it, like the military decorum and everything does make sense to me. The general like deference to rank and the officers supporting one another, specifically like the relationship between Sam Neill and Sean Connery's characters in this movie. And I mean the way that a lot of the upper officers don't like Jack Ryan's cocky attitude, thinking he knows everything. Because he's from the CIA, kind of a thing. Yeah, it all kind of tracks to me. It all does make sense for sure.
Imagine my shock when I slowly realized. It's great how they drop it, because at first they just say Mr. Ryan, and you're like, Alec Baldwin, Mr. Ryan, all right. And then they cut to the next scene, and the very first line of the next scene is a guy goes, "Hey, Jack, how are you doing?" And you go, "Wait a minute, Ryan, Jack." This is fucking John Krasinski's Jack Ryan. Oh,
well,
okay.
Of course.
I had no idea.
It's Tom Clancy.
Yeah.
You know? He's got like one idea.
He's got one Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. And my question is just, or my follow-up question also is, does anyone know, and I'm looking directly at you, Abe, because I expect you might know, is this completely fake? Or because at the beginning, the opening crawl makes a big badass deal about how the fact that this is incredibly classified hush-hush military information that really happened. So then my question becomes, is this a Fargo thing where that's just bullshit? Or did they Forrest Gump Jack Ryan into a real international crisis that unfolded?
I don't know.
Well, I'll just say, God, I love being connected to the sum total of all human knowledge at any time. And the internet tells me that the original novel was based on probably a particular mutiny of the Soviet frigate
Oh, okay.
Storoshivoy, or the loss of the Soviet submarine K-129. So it was based on a loose amalgam of historical events.
A real mutiny.
So yes, in some sense, they Forrest Gumped Jack Ryan into real crises.
Nice.
Okay, that's interesting.
Nice. Yeah.
Great. So what's y'all's relationship with this movie, fellas? I had never seen it before and always heard of it as like a classy drama. I think I only knew it through The Simpsons, referenced as like a drama that Homer would be too dumb to understand.
Yeah. I mean, it's also around this time, like this is kind of a decade of we love submarine movies. We really wanted submarine movies to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, list your examples. I'm sure you have them.
Crimson Tide, like I mean, that's like kind of the real conversation.
They're all red.
Yeah.
I know.
Was that K-19
because it's all
the
Soviet
Widowmaker?
shit.
What was that one?
K-19.
Yeah.
U-571. I mean, we're getting close to
Das
2000s.
Boot.
Das Boot earlier. Yeah, but like I think it's usually discussed, or the way it kind of falls is that you got Hunt for the Red October and you got Crimson Tide, which is the Denzel Washington one. And it's like, which one's better? And this one is directed by John McTiernan, director of Die Hard.
Yeah.
So you'd expect it to be a lot more action packed. It's not. It's more of a, like you mentioned, like a drama. Whereas Crimson Tide is like straight up thriller.
Yeah.
And that is, some people argue it's better. It just depends on what you're looking for, obviously. But I think most people argue that Hunt for Red October is probably the better film because it's got a lot more interesting premise work going, such that it is. But yeah,
I'm realizing
I liked it.
That submarines are a thing like quicksand, like a fictional trope that had a heyday. That's fascinating to me. I always love discovering those. And B, that I missed the entire boat, no pun intended, on that shit. I had not seen any of those movies, including Crimson Tide, which sounds like it might be worth watching because this was worth watching. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was super. It was fun. Yeah. Christian, had you seen this before? Like, is this
I think I might have seen it. I think I might have seen it with like my dad, like on a weekend. This was one of the like TNT TBS movies that would come on for sure.
Okay,
but
totally.
But I don't remember seeing it like all the way through just in one sitting. And I like this wasn't. I guess the sub genre. The subgenre would be something
the
that something that we entirely would have missed though, just because like our age, our dad would have had to make us watch these movies, kind of a thing, or like our uncle or whoever.
Well, my dad did make us watch a lot of these movies, but we missed subs for some reason.
Yeah,
I fucking love these movies. Okay, it's one of the top tier dad movies. I'm so glad we mentioned dads, right? Because like it's like boat movies. We love like Crimson Tide, Hunt for Red October, Master and Commander. Like these are classic dad titles, and it's always mutiny versus orders, right?
Yeah.
That's always what it occupies. That's like top tier dad shit. Is like, but to do the right thing or to be a part of the collective.
Do your duty. Yeah.
What should I do? I'm a father.
And of course, the choice is mine. I'm the patriarch.
I'm the patriarch, you see.
I am the captain of this family, after all.
Yeah. And it's got a bunch of dads in it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's got James Bond.
Alec Baldwin, famously great father.
Dr. Alan Grant, The Shadow.
Dude, when I realized Sam Neill was going to do a Russian accent, I was like, yes, dude, yes.
Yeah,
and then
rad.
I love that they have Connery do so little Russian that for a second I was like, he's a spy. He doesn't really know Russian. Then I was like, no, they just didn't want Sean Connery to try.
They're just like, you hire him
accent.
and not use his voice? That's stupid. It's just dumb. It's a dumb. It's like, it's dumb shit. And plus, dads have expectations, you know? And that's who this movie's really for. Although it's got Frank Furter in it as well. It's got Tim Curry.
I mean, it really does have an all-star cast. You got Courtney B. Vance in there too. Like,
it's
pretty great.
You got Gates McFadden
Gates
for
McFadden,
one scene.
not in the opening credits, but is
Beverly
depicted
Crusher.
during that sequence.
Herself.
Patron
We got
saint of autopsies.
we also got what's his name? Scott Glenn. He's Stick from the Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
He's low key really
It's
good.
a great
in this
cast,
movie.
and they're really close to each other because it's a submarine, and that's also
is.
like I love McTiernan does well. First of all, before we move off the language thing, which if you haven't seen it, they transitioned from speaking actual Russian with subtitles to our understanding, our collective mental understanding shifts to, look, they're just going to speak English and you understand that they're speaking Russian. And the way they do that is actually fairly simple and effective, which is what I call the whole movie. Just like Die Hard. Simple, but it's effective. Zooms in on a guy's mouth and he changes from Russian to English on a word and it zooms back out. And what's cool is the changeovers on the word Armageddon, which is the same in Russian and English. And is the theme of the film.
Clever.
Pretty cool.
It's pretty rad.
Do you want to know another cool tidbit about that? Which is actually
a tidbit? Of course I do.
a tidbit that will actually probably hurt your... Like, you'll probably make it not feel as great.
Okay.
McTiernan also directed a film called The 13th Warrior, where he does the same
Oh, that
trick.
is the same exact maneuver. Oh, man.
So McTiernan was just like, yeah, I fucking nailed it on Red October. I'm going to do it again, motherfuckers. I'm John McTiernan, goddammit!
Oh, speaking of that, dude, this movie has a scene where the protagonist crawls through ducts saying pithy shit to himself, imitating other people sarcastically, a la Die Hard. Because Jack Ryan crawls around going... oh, Ryan, some things in here don't react well to bullets. Yeah, me, smart guy, I don't react well to bullets. Come out to the coast, have a few laughs. Like,
a few laughs.
Very interesting to see the overlap and the brazen. It's kind of like seeing the new Doctor Strange movie and going, yeah, Raimi, gonna Raimi.
Yep.
Gonna have those shots in there.
He knows what we like and he knows how to do it. So it's like, just play the hits, you know? It's also, when you think about it, I hadn't realized this in my previous viewings, but in this viewing, it's just The Rock in the sea.
It's The Rock in the sea. Meditate
Which is
on
crazy
that.
because Sean Connery.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. That was weird to me. I was like, wow, it really is The Rock when you think about like what's going on here, you know? Just swap Ed Harris with
Is The Rock
Sean
an
Connery.
attempt to defect? Is someone attempting to defect?
I mean, I guess that wouldn't be an exact parallel, but he's not intending to do the thing that he wanted. Like he's all posturing, making it seem like he's going to do this horrible thing. But the reality is that he's not a monster at all. He in fact he just was doing it to hopefully let the group that he's after, essentially, and in this case, the Soviet Union, playing chicken with them. And that's a lot of what this maneuvers are. In fact, every maneuver that Sean Connery does literally with the submarine is he just plays chicken with things.
Yeah.
Like he just like go directly at the missile until
it's usually
you or the missile decide that you need to move because you're going to move, buddy.
I love his solution is always, they're like, but it's 15. He's like, wait till it's 4. And they're like, all right, 4.
All right.
And he's like, all
He's
right,
a
do it now.
maverick.
And they're like,
a maverick.
hey, it solved everything somehow. You're a genius, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good.
And it worked. And it's very clever because in that case in point, it's that by going directly at the missile hadn't armed yet because for safety's sake, they don't arm the actual warhead until it's X distance from their own submarine. So he said, go right toward it and like smother it, like ram it before it can arm.
Yeah.
That's very clever and satisfying.
It's very clever.
No, and it's like that all pays off too, because then the American captain, when they're out maneuvering the second torpedo, goes straight towards the other Russian submarine and gets the torpedo to hit them.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
Which they needed to happen because for people who haven't seen it, basically it's that Sean Connery as the commander of a Soviet sub that has an heretofore unknown to man, super cool stealth engine system that allows it to park nukes anywhere. Wants to defect and give that sub to the Americans, and they have to elaborately at every step make it seem like that's not what's happening, because otherwise the Soviets would cause an international incident publicly. So by the end, they very conveniently get a fucking Skarsgård up in the movie and blow him up.
Daddy
Skarsgård gets blowed up real good so that they can pretend, oh, that was the Red October that blowed up. And then I do love the scene where they cover the obvious plot hole, which is the Soviet ambassador goes, well, what happened to Skarsgård's sub, dude? And the American ambassador's like, so let me get this straight. You want to go on public record and say you lost your 2 best subs and you just can't stop losing subs like an asshole? And he's like, well, let's think about this. And you're like, that's a good maneuver, dude.
Just use their pride against them. It's kind of perfect. But then he's like, yeah, but in the future we're gonna have like better sonar, right? So eventually we'll figure this out. And the
Cold War continues.
Like, yeah, sure, in 10 years. Go ahead.
We just got to have a fun adventure. The Cold War is not solved or anything.
Yeah. Except for
and these
it
lives
stops
don't really matter.
in 1991 with the fall of the Berlin Wall. So 1 year later.
And no one is fighting for like the lieutenants and the privates in the Soviet sub who died, who literally died just following orders, and just no one cares, because I guess in America we care, but in the Soviet Union
Soviets don't love their children. It's true.
They don't love their children, apparently. That's what John McTiernan said.
They don't take a dump
in my head canon now. In my head canon now, the Red October just pulled up alongside Germany, blew the shit out of the Berlin Wall, and that's how that war ended.
Hell yeah!
It's a time traveling submarine.
It's over.
It's over.
Yeah. You love each other now. That's my Sean Connery. It's not great.
Speaking of Sean Connery, I love that Alec Baldwin describing Ramirez, who's the character that Connery's playing. He says because they have to do actually the whole beginning is actually, this is why I love McTiernan actually. Like the efficiency of the inciting incident is so fucking good. It's like top tier to me. Like the scene with James Earl Jones and Alec Baldwin, like we get like maybe like 5 minutes before this, we get Alec Baldwin, Jack Ryan, like we see his family, we see kind of what type of guy he is. But then we just get one inciting incident, which is a scene between James Earl Jones, who's like an admiral.
Yeah.
And he just kind of info dumps, but like in a good scene. It's like kind of a good scene where they're like, they're trying to kind of feel out what each other's expertise is. But you get within like 3 lines of dialogue. We got a big ass boat. Sean Connery's a badass, which Alec Baldwin has studied, and it's coming right at us. And it's just like, it's within like 3 lines of dialogue. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. But, one of the things that Jack Ryan says about Ramirez is that he's nearly a legend in the submarine community.
Sure,
which I think is a hilarious idea. Like, I know there is probably something that you could technically describe as a submarine community.
The submariners of the world.
I just like the idea that he's like got his finger on the pulse of a community of submarine people, and he's like, he's been a maverick his whole
subscribes
career.
to fucking Underwater Weekly or whatever.
Yeah, and they got like inner
updates.
Politics. He's been blacklisted because of an article he wrote.
Let them see.
Yeah, it's one of those silly kind of like, imagine someone had studied someone, like we've seen that trope so many times, like where the protagonist is like, I'm a fish out of water. I don't know, but like, look, I do know a thing or two about this one guy, and that makes you the perfect man for the job. Even though he's not even a CIA agent, he's a fucking book writer.
Yeah, he's an analyst.
Technical.
No, he writes. They literally ask him like, "What do you? You're CIA?" He's like, "I'm not an agent. I just write books for them."
Yeah,
which I didn't think is a thing that CIA does. Like,
I think he says he's an analyst at some point too, right? Like that's part of his job or whatever.
That's Jack Ryan for it.
The fabric of Jack Ryan's reality changes as he gets re-inhabited by various actors, much like James Bond.
Yeah, that's also true. If we look at, because you mentioned the John Krasinski thing, like Jack Ryan in the old days, like Sum of All Fears, Patriot Games, all that stuff.
Very present day.
Yeah. he was always an analyst who had to go into the line of fire, and he's always portrayed as like, oh, geez, man, I'm not a field agent.
Yeah.
And now he's just straight up like Jack Ryan is just like the
Shadow
the
recruit.
Chris Pine. The Chris Pine ones. He's just like, no, he's just a secret agent. He's literally James Bond. And it's like, well, we kind of buried the whole.
Well, that's
point
why
of
this
he
phase
wasn't.
of Jack Ryan's such a perfect fit for McTiernan,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, they didn't fuck with the formula, and they were like, shit, what's it? McClane. It's a clear McClane. He's not too old for this shit, but he's not right. He wasn't meant to do this. Is key to the McTiernan formula, or the magic at least of that era. And I gotta say, I wonder if people out there feel the same way, or even if Cristian might resonate with me on this. But I guess I'm a bit of a snob on it. But I feel like I actually do ding points for scenes where, and I love movies like Reservoir Dogs. They just have a scene where the guy info dumps. The one that gets me in this is all these movies have a fucking scene. It's envy, I guess. They all have a scene where Alec Baldwin soberly explains the stakes of the movie directly to the audience by way of explaining it to a council of learned elders who we never have seen before and will never see again. And it's just an excuse for the character to literally go, so this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And I gotta stress, it's really, really a big deal. You should be very engaged right now. And then the scene ends with the guy go, oh, and one more thing. There's 3. And the guy goes, 3? That's unprecedented. We're dealing with a madman. And it cuts out. And I guess I'm envious because I labor so hard to not write like that. And then when you see it work fine, and people love Marvel movies, and you're like, oh, I guess it's fine. I guess just fuck me. Then I guess we can just do info dumps. No one cares.
I mean, I think
fuck you.
Yeah, I think the part of it is like you write comedy, and this is a very specific like political thriller, and I think you get away with it really well if you're like somebody briefing a bunch of generals, or like a lawyer that's going over the case or whatever. Like, there's ways that it makes sense within the movie, whereas if you try to put it into like a family drama or a comedy or something, it just doesn't fit as well. And I think, well, I mean, and Abe, you mentioned him being like a nerd or whatever. Like, he's an analyst. He writes books for the CIA, and that's another like perfect parallel with, you mentioned The Rock earlier. Like, it's Nick Cage's character. He's the like that's Michael Bay just watched this movie and was like, no, I want to do this again.
Oh, and this movie had already existed.
Yeah.
You know, like this is all generic tropes. It's also what, like, as you were describing, Swaim, the scene with the info dump, like, it's literally Roland Emmerich's scientist scenes with the president, you know, and he's done that scene fucking every single movie he's ever made. It's such a tired trope that we never get really tired of, because we're like, yeah, it's just a thing now. You know, it's fine, and it has its purpose, the info dump. And you know, we like to see our main heroes, even if they're like, in one hand you're showing us scene after scene after scene of them being badass. You like it better if they're kind of a John McClane. You like it when they are up against their backs against the wall and against all odds. You know, it's the fucking Cinderella story that America's in love with.
There's a lot of different flavors that work. I agree that flavor is very powerful and palpably nostalgic and engaging to me. But I've also seen movies where it's just like, it's good to watch a professional work. I get the power trip version where the guy is perfect or the gal is perfect. It works less often though. You know what you get with those is hot messes like Ultraviolet and shit, where you're like,
oh yeah,
you think you're trying so hard to be over the top cool, and you're not cool at all.
When it's like trying to say something. Yeah, I think you said it perfectly there. Like, when your motivation for making the movie is, I want to make a cool movie, like a movie that is seen as cool, like Die Hard. And you ape the formula, but don't really understand why the formula is that way and why it can't be reconstructed necessarily in the same way every time. Those are the worst movies.
It's very interesting as a culture to see the pendulum swing with how we treat our heroes' journey between, you know, there's multiple like axes upon which you could track it. But I think one that's interesting is are our heroes in over their heads, or cool, calm, and collected every step of the way? we have both movements, occurring simultaneously at some times, but at other times I think we do really strongly prefer one type over the other. And definitely the 80s and early 90s was in over your head or too old for this shit or a misfit in some way was so big.
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious that we went like into the 2000s and 2010s. We fell in love with we really fell in love with the technological advances that had been happening.
Yeah.
And that wanted to be commented upon on society. So even when you look at the trash, like the dregs of this kind of stuff, like fucking stealth or something like that, like it's always corporate. It's like our goal is to become corporate. Even Iron Man is smacks of that, you know? It's very funny to me what we focus on recently. And this is in the 90s. Par for the course kind of starts the decade because this is 90.
It's 90.
This is 90. So so it's like it's straight up setting the tone for those types of movies, which came directly from Die Hard and John McTiernan. He basically just crafted the 90s hero story.
Yeah,
that's why he's kind of awesome to me.
And I mean, it's kind of cyclical too, right? Like, because in the 80s, all the action heroes were supermen. Like, they were untouchable badasses.
In the early 80s, mid 80s, yeah, for sure.
And then in the 90s, we get the everyman for a lot of it. And then, like, once the Matrix hits or something, then we get more Supermen again. And, like, we kind of never came out of the Superman kind of motif just because superheroes caught on. And like,
I think the perfect hero is ascendant right now. Yeah.
And like, I mean, but also they found a way to give us like kind of everyman characters within the superhero genre when you have like Spider-Man or even
Logan,
like,
and that makes them stand out.
Yeah,
they stand out against the backdrop of perfection. Yeah. Superhuman.
And you know what the 2020s is going to be, or it seems to be shaping up that way.
We're
in the worst timeline. We need someone to save us from the worst timeline.
And they need to be perfect, or
it's just the concept.
Or just the concept. It's been multiverses they're aliens.
They're
for a while.
Yeah, they're outside of our in this case, the current reality, and there needs to be someone who can somehow rechange that reality from inside or from outside, alter the reality.
So you think we're sublimating, like our stories in aggregate are starting to express that we need the whole system to change fundamentally.
I do think that's true.
So we're getting transformation, transcendence stories.
Because like once we reached the 2000s, especially like basically when the internet hit, you know, like when that started becoming mainstream, we really took these hero myths and they really it became all myth. We did have simultaneous perfect superheroes like Superman, or you know, like we also had everyman superheroes who are also corporate, like Iron Man. We had like, because we're dredging from the past, which a lot of these comic books and a lot of these stories came from. But like when you look at like the people who are currently working, like in the 90s, like the Tom Clancy's, or like in the now, when you look at like, I don't know, the like Daniels, right?
We're like still Tom Clancy to some degree.
Well, it's like we're trying to see all the positions, because now we can just, like you said earlier in this podcast, go on a magic machine that gives us all the answers. So it doesn't feel like there is any one current timeline, and there's not one current hero. There's all heroes, and so we're dealing with that metaphysical.
And there's so much media now, speaking of the Daniels, that's about a multiplicity of experience, all infinitely overlaid on top of each other, but realizing that we're still all connected through it all.
Yes.
Which you'd expect to be a post the invention of the internet trend in storytelling. It totally makes sense.
But
they were like, oh, we're all connected. Yeah, of course that's something this generation has to say. We lived through the internet coming into existence.
But that, well, I mean, because that was the 90s. That's why the Wachowskis were kind of prescient, is that in 1999, they knew like these were the themes that were going to be like big in the 2000s. And of course, when we were confronted with something like the collectivism of information and identity, aka the internet, they were like, we first meet it with fear. We are terrified of what it is because someone's going to ruin it. And they were right about that. And now it's like we're kind of fighting back. There's a little bit of beauty and sweetness to how like it develops, but we are very slow, I think, as a collective. Our movies take a very long time to replicate the thoughts that we're having.
Yeah, there's a lag of 5 to 10 years. on it
easy
for sure.
Well, yeah, because even when we're talking about everything everywhere all at once, there is that part of it that is the struggle between a younger generation and an older generation. It's like what we have inherited from them and how they're responsible for that, and like, but how we are also responsible to them. Like it's like that. It's the interconnectedness, not just between everybody, but also between everybody, like that spans our different generations and stuff like that too. And it's only if we all work together that we get the good, the happy ending at the end of that movie in particular.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. What a good podcast on for the Red October.
Speaking of things that change direction very slowly,
like submarines.
I wanted to say that it's amazing that he's able to make it the actual submarine photography so engaging, because
yes,
so much good. So easily you could have like come off of Top Gun or Speed, or I know I'm breaking timelines to do this, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In traditional action, you shoot for speed, you shoot for velocity or something to be excitingly close, blah, blah, blah. I like that he knew and embraced. You're not going to get that from a submarine.
Yeah.
A submarine is inherently slow, but what it is big. And he shoots it like a monolith, like a dinosaur in the water. He shoots it for size and scope and to make you go, wow, there's people inside that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Right.
Very good Leviathan photography.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, I wish like there would be a Godzilla film like this. All our kaiju movies now are all just like, oh, look at that one. That one's cool for this reason.
It's coming on shore and it
speed.
has fins and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, that one's a fast one. And it's just like, no, just do like they're all too massive to move quickly. And I love that. And I love that they did it's like very good. Obviously, so when you watch it, obviously when they cut away, it's like they have this, I don't know how big the model is, but a model that's probably larger than you think in a small tank relative to it. And then they have a grid of wires that they just kind of move around to allow it to move axis. And then in post, you just can kind of just show, or like even in front of camera, you can just blow water across it and it makes it look like it's moving whatever speed you want. So McTiernan could have made them move really fast and made the missiles even. I think the missiles is the key.
Yeah.
Because the missiles are something that's even faster than submarines and shown relatively. And he chooses that those are also covering vast distances. So they're just like, meow, like very slowly moving.
But then when they
target.
blow up, it's like dread, because you're like, that thing will fuck the entire ship.
Yeah.
It's
just that one
cool.
little thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
No, and
good.
I was just gonna say the sound design that goes along with it too adds so much to it. Just with the sonar and the way that he uses the music occasionally too, when it is the very tense moments when they're trying to outrun a torpedo or outmaneuver one of the other subs, and just the constant pinging of that sonar it adds so much tension, and it's just like they're very well that's like
Shades
it's a perfectly constructed scene.
Yeah, 10 meters, 5 meters. And it definitely feels like, the very first episode of this podcast, Frame Rate, was about Saving Private Ryan, and I definitely remember we discussed how the tank is handled like a lion or a creature of some kind, and I feel like they pull the same trick. And I wondered even if the sound design there was one point where a sound made me think, I was like, I think there's some animal sounds in there. I can't confirm that. And I actually did a Google search, but I couldn't quickly confirm or deny that. But I wouldn't be surprised. And it's
not at all.
Treated that way. And it flashed me back to like recurring nightmares I used to have as a little kid of, you ever have the dream of being in the water and you can breathe like you are a water creature and just like a giant, massively huge shadow coming up from underneath you? That was a regular for me.
Something fairly similar, yeah.
Or some
sure.
in that area, Sam Neill Dreams of Life in America. I immediately predicted. I was like, doomed to die? Question mark.
Yes, exactly. We can't have a Soviet on our shores. By
Connery gets
Job.
a pass.
Yeah, he can't be happy. He can't have a future. I guess Ramirez does. But it's like bittersweet because he never expresses like a genuine want for it. In fact, he even
he just
kind
wants to
of
go fishing.
digs on America. He says, and they're rock and roll. Like he just wants to get out of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be an American. That is palatable to us as an American audience. But as a Russian who wants to be an American, an immigrant, what?
I think it also is just in service of the classic hero's journey, right? That's the cost. You always return with the treasure, but at a cost. And the easiest cost, as we've seen in many films, is some friend who's been along for the ride tragically dies. Oh, that does sting. Yeah.
It's actually a beautiful scene, though, because two very good actors, but also, like, I love how quick the death is, and I love... So Sam Neill does a great job. Like he just dies quickly, and sometimes an understated death is sometimes the best death. And he didn't need to be a big death, so he just kind of like his eyes just go dead, and he's just gone. But Sean Connery, who is laughable in a lot of his roles. I mean, James Bond is anything but just like he's just one note the whole time. Sean Connery is actually a really good actor. We forget it, and it's in subtleties like this where he grabs him like he's like, don't die, and he's about to start a speech of like, stay with me, and then he gives up.
Yeah.
And he realizes it's too late, and then he looks around kind of like in a judgment of everything. Yeah. And then he goes back to work. And it's like 4 different beats in like a single, I don't know, 3 seconds, and it's pretty amazingly pulled off.
Yeah, I think
you're not sure exactly what he's thinking, but you get the gist.
Yeah, I think this era is like the best era of Connery because you get this, Last Crusade, and Untouchables all in a short span, and I think that's like his. I mean, I don't know, like when he was younger, besides his Bond stuff, I haven't seen a lot of it. But as far as his acting goes, those 3 are just like. That's the best that I've ever seen him. And this one in particular, I was surprised at like how subtle and just like meaningful all those moments are. Yeah.
He's not known for his subtlety.
Right.
You know, give her a schmack. You know, he's not a very subtle man, or was a very subtle man. But like, you know, there are times that he actually pulled it off, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Or all I wish to add.
And when you have like a firm hand at the rudder like McTiernan, you just get cool. I don't know. There's something about this era of the well-made. I guess I'm just getting old, but there is a nostalgia for the structure itself. The well-made play, so to speak, version of these movies that Die Hard established. So what's funny is my yardstick is really just, and I apply it to other action movies of this era and others. How close is this to what Die Hard felt like? And it's like, well, of course McTiernan's going to nail that because he's the guy. And like the big example that came to me was the moment of just how stupid, simple, and yet effective the maneuver of when Jack Ryan leaves, he says goodbye to his little daughter and promises he'll get her a teddy bear. And when he flies back at the end, he has the teddy bear, it's a Russian one because he got it in the seat next to him. And I had that moment. I had that little joy of being able to figure out for myself, like a little puzzle, oh, right. Daddy went to work and he tamed a Russian bear and he brought it back to America.
Right.
That's also what the movie is. That's cool. And
he's a teddy bear now.
It's rare that action movies try to operate at that level anymore.
Yeah.
Not that they try and fail. It like they don't give a shit about shit like that.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like Marvel movies don't have that thing. Not that, and I just think they don't care about it. But I love that shit. Where you're like, that shot or sequence or maneuver is a microcosm of the thing itself. Always gets me. Always.
Yeah. And it's less that we aren't, I think it's just a lack of interest. You know, it's not that it's like a film wouldn't do that or isn't capable of doing it. That's a silly opinion. It's more of just that we want to spend the time that we have on these films on something else.
Yes.
Now we can still discuss if those are good decisions, but I think there is something to be said about the 90s were the time for that, and now here we are 30 years later, it can be the time for something else. So I'm not. I am saddened by it because I do think it's a really well-oiled machine that you're like, I wish those machines existed.
I wish they still made them like that. But on the other hand, there is a part of me that's like, that's not intrinsically better or even more meaningful. All you're saying is the thing should be fractalized in a way where the inner parts look like the outer parts and it all reinforces itself. That's just one way to make art. That is not the way to make art for sure.
Maybe it's just like the most beautiful typewriter or something like that. Something that's just outdated.
in real large part, who cares? Maybe you could cram your movie with a bunch of different messages, or and I've seen movies that try to do that to varying effect. But yeah, this one's like a straight line drive. A steak with a pat of butter on it. Like most people will be fine with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It is a very efficient movie for sure. Like you can speak to the efficiency of this movie. Like, I mean, I don't know. I know that the script must have been very tight, and I know that just everything has its purpose in this movie. I don't feel like anything's wasted at all in this entire movie.
There's no fat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another little maneuver that the story does, well, it's McTiernan because it's not the writing.
And Jan de
Bont,
Bont, we should mention at some point.
Oh yeah, and also the cinematographer of Die Hard, who's the cinematographer of this film.
Fucking
great.
Yeah.
But a nice little touch is that early on, there's a helicopter scene where they're like taking Jack Ryan, the first one, where they're taking Jack Ryan to somewhere, and he's super nervous, and it's like a goofy scene where you typically see like. There's a guy who's just like, yeah, I'm just talking about all the different, all stuff I love about helicopters, and I'm just gonna be talking a mile a minute, and it's just like that's where you are, and Jack Ryan is just losing his shit. He's super nervous, and we're supposed to go, oh, look at the pencil pusher, ha ha ha, and then it's revealed.
Yep.
Later, in a later scene, that he almost lost his ability to walk in a copter accident. So I love that that's something we don't really do anymore. We don't usually construct retroactive reveals. It's
His
a nice
wife
method.
Is in a coma.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's because like TV has maybe done that for us, where it's like use it as a cliffhanger. Don't use it as a retroactive like aha moment.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought like that. It's a nice way or method to find some form of unexpected exposition.
Yeah,
so,
but
even if it is the same generic protagonist is badass, hoorah kind of thing.
It's really interesting. Our little tangent about the hero's journey changing its shape. That these IPs that have persisted the whole time, and I'm thinking here of Sherlock Holmes, Jack Ryan, and James Bond. Have all made concessions to the trend and then reverted back. Like Casino Royale was famously one where James Bond was like in over his head all of a sudden more than he's been. And he slowly worked his way back to being perfect again in the most recent one.
Yeah.
And Sherlock Holmes, they reinvented with Robert Downey Jr. as like a little rough around the edges and having mental challenges that make his life difficult. It's just very cool to watch that happen.
Yeah.
It's like we needed to break our brains to understand the next thing.
Yeah.
And the next thing is more of the same, though. It's like
those IPs
around 2005,
are flexible.
we had to have a wipe.
Yeah.
We just had to have like... Yeah.
It is a really good Jack Ryan origin story, too, because that retroactive reveal then turns into growth for him when he actually is getting onto the submarine and he has to just detach on his own and like get rescued by the divers. Like, he,
it's like when you,
he sacks up. He becomes the hero version of Jack Ryan by the end of the movie.
Yeah, and when you say it, like, that's one of the things that makes me the most excited about film. Something Mike and I will always say is, like, is it like a postcard of the thing that you mean?
Yeah.
Like, is everything down, itemize everything. Who are the people talking? What are they talking about? Like, where are they? Like, how is the bodies oriented in space? Pick, like, as many of those as possible and have them all scream the same thing. It's a postcard of grief, or it's a postcard of, something else. But the idea of being able to do that, and like just as you're describing, like, oh yeah, and it's like him detaching. Like, I love that when you can say that about films. It makes me engaged in films. Makes me go like, there's love and work here because they're precious with every every little aspect of the story. It's not that it's great or it's like the coolest or the best. It's just,
it's on
it's
task.
so precious.
That's all. It's just
Yeah.
on task. It's focused.
They're holding it with their hands and being like, please notice this. And it's just like, I do notice it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's cute. It's lovely.
Yeah.
There's a few more things though.
Mhm.
Because this film also, we kind of alluded to it earlier, and maybe there's not much more to say about it, but there's huge Soviets after the Cold War, and a little bit removed after the Cold War, 5 to 10 years after the Cold War, especially in the 90s, and Tom Clancy and all that, like there was this kind of xenophobic like acceptance of they're not, we don't hate them enough, but they're always the bad guys.
Yeah.
Like, and that's an old, everyone knows about this.
Oh,
like,
the cook's just some lone weirdo who's bad at
Yeah.
the end suddenly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has that
this
going on for
movie
it.
is right on the lift of that, but it's the casual kind of like nationalism that is weird. Like, for example, Jack Ryan is talking with another admiral at one point in the middle of the movie, and well, first off, the admiral says something. He says Russians don't take a dump without having a plan.
Yeah.
Which is then brought up later in the movie, which is crazy to me that is brought up. But I actually have
You
few
mean that
questions.
elaborate scene where Sean Connery plans out his dump and misses the important
That's
meeting?
the thing. Okay, so you already know
First
what I'm
I
talking
will
about.
squat.
I have a few questions.
I'm going to
'cause
make
does that
no,
mean,
torpedo
like,
noises when I dump.
First, I will undo the belt buckle. Then I will.
that's what I
squat.
want to know. What are the
Torpedo
components of
away.
the plan for dumping?
Oh, okay, that was the question.
Well, yeah, that's one of the many questions. I have many questions about this.
Yeah.
But like, if you were to make like a binder, and it said like plan for dump, like, how could it be any more than sitting, dumping, wiping, right?
Oh,
I mean,
there's a
like-
great. One of my favorite stand-ups, Brian Regan, has a killer bit about there's instructions on the Pop-Tart on how to toast the Pop-Tart on the Pop-Tart box. And he's like,
Placing-
how can that be more than step 1? Toast Pop-Tart. But it is. It's like 4 steps or something.
It's 4 steps.
Remove
yeah.
pastry from protective pouch. Shit like that.
He's got
So
a
you
plan.
could get real granular. Yeah,
Yeah.
there could be belt buckle
You could
talk.
get granular.
What if you
I
don't have
assume
a belt
it's-
buckle? What if you have a tie? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I assume
drawstring.
he means that in any level of distress, they could still take a dump, I guess, which is another funny thing to say about Russians. Another question I have is, does this mean that the admiral who says this doesn't plan for his dumps? Like,
They just
is he
come-
setting
They just come-
a dichotomy?
They just hit him and he's got to sprint to the fucking bathroom when it happens.
Or
Not
is
like
this-
me.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
I gotta go. Oh, shit. Or and does he think that all Americans, like, is it just Russians who plan for dumps? Like, I want to understand the nature of so many assumptions he's making. And at the heart of it is, I guess, like, Soviets be like this.
Yeah.
Americans be like this. That's silly. I don't know why that still works. Does that still work on us, on people, on
I don't
humans?
know.
Like doing those bits? I guess that does still kind of work on us.
Yeah, I guess like now maybe you'd get more xenophobia with like China or something, or like, I mean, there's still Russia for sure that we'd probably get in particular movies. I don't know.
That's right.
Are you asking if there's still shrouded, seething xenophobia disguised as humor in the country?
Like, widely
almost certainly
accepted-
yes.
Yeah, almost certainly, because there's for every
I do think it's
flavor of
become more
racism, there's a racist.
complexified and
Yeah.
it hides itself more.
I think
Yeah.
it hides itself better,
Yes.
but it's interesting to see it in this way, because it's not like, no one is going to be offended by someone saying Russians never take a dump without having a plan. I don't think anyone's truly offended by the
Right.
statement, but what's
It's
going
also
on
very
behind
weird.
that, and
Yeah.
it's seen, what's crazy to me is it's seen as a line that we're supposed to be like, that's something to think about. That's so true of Russians. And also, like, this is the kind of people we should idolize the people who have these kind of thoughts.
Well, yeah.
And it's just a silly kind
very
of
silly.
understanding of.
And they bring it back like 5 minutes later when Jack Ryan is taking the weirdest shower. He's like bending over. I think must be washing his taint at the beginning of that scene, just because of the way that he's doing it.
He calls it his crazy Ivan.
His crazy Ivan.
And like then he comes back and he's saying that to himself. He's saying Russians don't take a dump without having a plan. And then he like has this eureka moment of, oh, this is what Sean Connery's plan is going to be. Like that's
he's
an
gonna
important
take a
piece
dump.
of
It's like
dialogue.
actual wisdom.
The sub is the turd, and he's the dumper, and America's the toilet. Of course,
the movie treats it like actual wisdom, and that's what's bizarre to me, because that's a part of the like casual nationalism or racism.
It's like if
is that
Dr. House's friend Wilson was like, "Well, shit in your hand and call it a hand grenade," and he's like, "Wait a minute, they have lymphoma stage 4 or whatever." Yeah,
by George, he's right. Yeah, it's. I love blasts from the past in this regard.
Yeah.
You love
it's
dated
so weird.
racism from the past.
I mean, I kind of do love it. Yeah, it shows
This is
us where
definitely
we
more
came from.
nationalism because it is.
Yeah.
It's specifically about the Cold War and the Soviets,
For sure.
not just all Russian people. I do think that's
Well,
a distinction.
because Sean Connery's a good Soviet because he's from Lithuania.
That's
They make sure to point that out. That he was.
Guys, it's not a real Russia.
Although I gotta say, even though I should have known, because this was still the era where stars of that caliber tended to only be good ultimately in the movie.
Yeah.
Whereas now we do the opposite, where we go, oh, he's the famous guy, he's going to be the surprise villain. But the era being what it was, I should have guessed. But I will say the movie definitely did to me what it set out to do, which is throughout my notes I go, because I'm always trying to predict it, of course.
Yeah.
I go, oh, he is defecting, he's good. And then later in my notes go, oh, no, he's just saying he's defecting, but he's actually launching the nukes. And then I go like, aha, see, I was right. He is really launching the nukes. And then I wrote like, oh, well done, movie. He's not.
Yeah.
So like I was constantly doubling back on, well, is this guy launching the nukes or isn't he? And that's exactly what you want from a thriller like this. You gotta,
for sure.
Credit where credit's due. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What else we got?
I liked the when he says, "I hope the American's not some buckaroo," and then it cuts to Alec Baldwin. I really wanted Alec Baldwin to say, "Yeah," but no, no such line.
Yeah.
And then you zoom out, and his
Yippee-ki-yay.
daughter's riding him like a horsey, and then he promises her the teddy bear. Like it could all work.
Yeah.
I don't know if this
What
is
were
a
you gonna
hot
say?
take, but I actually think Alec Baldwin is maybe the best. Like, I don't know if he's the best Jack Ryan, but he's the best suited. Like the way he played Jack Ryan, I think is actually the best for that character specifically.
I think you're right, actually, because I think Harrison Ford did set the standard. He set the standard, but he's too badass, I think.
Yes.
I think it gets in the way. And I think that Alec Baldwin and Total Sleeper, I know it's coming out of nowhere, but Ben Affleck,
the sum of all
in
fears.
Sum of All Fears, because he really plays the analyst aspect.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that. I like
It's the accountant himself, man.
I like that there's only one kind of... It is strange in this movie, in particular, Jack Ryan. Like, I love it when you say, Christian, the idea of him, like, ejecting from the,
From the helicopter.
The line from the helicopter. Yeah. Like, that is a great little moment where it's like he's advanced in his, he's grown, and this is the kind of badass he can be. And then you cut to him, who we just recently in the previous scene said, you're just an author, really. You're not really like a field agent. And the immediate reaction is, okay, there's a Russian on the ship who's going to sabotage everything and blow us all up. Send the author. It's like, it's
Here's
such
a gun,
weird
Jack.
kind of, and he does it. He fucking diehards his way over there and shoots him when he needs to right before he blows up the ship. And it's just like, that is a weird growth. I understand that Tom Clancy wants to tap into CIA agents have this past that means that they're ex-military.
Yeah.
And he did all this stuff. He's capable of it. He just doesn't do it anymore. And I think that aspect is most proven by those two actors as opposed to like the Harrison Ford or any of the fucking turkeys we have now. So
Yeah, the new ones are just action heroes. They're not.
they're just
Yeah.
They're just cool American James Bonds.
Yeah, and that's
all
not who
they're
Jack
trying to
Ryan
be.
should be. Yeah.
I mean, it's not where he came from.
Right.
I guess.
No. I
if
think.
we care.
Yeah. It makes
No,
more
we
sense
shouldn't.
and makes him more distinct if he's like Nick Cage's character in The Rock. Like that's like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what we're used to, I guess, is probably the
Clearly,
best
we
way
gotta
to
cover
say.
The Rock at some point because I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, I knew this about you, and it's strange. It's kind of weird.
I know it
and
has
gets in the
those
way of a
glowy green ball
relationship.
super weapon.
Yeah.
I know it involves
Super
infiltrating the
important.
Rock or exfiltrating the Rock, but I don't
Yeah.
know
Yes.
why.
Well, you have to see the movie.
I will.
Is that one Bay's
it's-
best movie? I feel like I don't know what.
It's his only movie.
Okay.
I don't see his other movies. I mean, I guess Pain and Gain could be argued because he's like making fun of himself.
Sure.
But I still don't
I
even
like Pain
think
and Gain,
that.
but then when people are like, it's super exploitative and manipulative of the information,
Yes.
I'm like, yes, it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It is, and also I think the reason that we do like that movie is because it's almost like Michael Bay making fun of himself, and there's maneuvers he does in that film, where I'm pretty sure he doesn't understand what he's doing. Like I think he kind of gets it, but he's like there for the joke. It's kind of like that one scene in It's Always Sunny. Have you seen the blooper reel where like Charlie is being told they're being chastised by the other two? Being told like, you got to stop doing this, Charlie. This is a bad idea. You can't do this. It's ruining everything. And he's like, yeah, I feel like he doesn't even get us, guys. And it's
Yeah.
like, what do you think is happening? It's like, I think Michael Bay is that Charlie Day in that moment. He's like, yeah, make fun of me. I do all these things. And we're like, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And then he does them, and we're like, oh, fuck, this is actually kind of fun. And then before the end of it, he still does stuff that you're like,
You're
oh,
like,
yeah, I
that
forgot.
sucked though, and he's like, well, you like the other thing, so I'm gonna keep going.
So I'm going to keep going. And it's like, damn, that's not what we
Damn,
wanted.
I
out of
shouldn't have
this
said
deal.
that thing was fun. I just encouraged him.
I just encouraged the monster. But yeah, The Rock is legitimately
Yeah,
like,
McTiernan
maybe a
rules.
perfect film.
Bay is a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're all monsters. They're old dudes. So let's not get
I'm
hasty.
rapidly becoming an old dude. When do I reach monster territory?
Probably
Right?
I
Yeah,
don't
hit
know,
me up on Twitter and let
50?
me know. Whenever I become a monster, please let me know.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's it, right?
Yeah,
think
pretty
that
much.
was
That can
it.
be it.
And like I will say one more, like we mentioned earlier that there's not a lot of actual action, like quote unquote action in this movie. There's only one real sequence where there's gunfire happening. But the way that the tension works in this movie is so like all the scenes where they're like the subs are being fired upon by torpedoes or whatever. All of those scenes have as much tension and suspense and just like it works like an action scene.
It's like a good Battlestar episode at the CIC. Yeah.
Yes. That is perfectly elucidated.
Yeah, I think Battlestar definitely learned from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a taut political thriller.
It really is.
It
And
really is.
I can't wait for you to
Has
watch
that Moneyball
Crimson
vibe.
Tide,
Okay.
Michael, and then
will.
you'll really be getting into
yeah.
the sub movies, subgenre.
Then I'll watch Red Underwater Boat, the third in the trilogy.
U571, you got to watch. That one's
I actually think
wild.
I have seen that. I saw
okay.
that in theaters at the time. That's the Paxton one?
It's McConaughey. I think Paxton is in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wild. It's wild. It's U-boats. It's German U-boats.
Yeah.
Cristian, we want to thank you for being here and frankly listening to our nonsense for the most part. You're always gracious. Where can people find you and what do you want to talk about for, like, I don't know, take a minute right now and talk
Take a
about
lap.
whatever you want to. Yeah.
Say whatever you want.
So, I mean, easiest way to find me is on Twitter, currently at Fanboy Cristian. That's Cristian with no H. Yeah, you'll see stuff there that I do. Yeah, most of the other stuff that I've done recently is just like I did a commercial for the VA where one of the patrons has made a fantastic GIF of me. There's
the best
also
thing. The best thing.
Yeah, it's
I can't
fantastic.
stop looking at it.
But yeah, other than that, I've just been like, I mean, you guys kind of know I've been learning carpentry and stuff recently. So, but yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, keep an eye out for anything that's on my Twitter is where I will share it. And obviously, just I'm here with you guys and occasionally do stuff with the Gamefully Unemployed boys as well, whenever they have me on a Hypecast or whatever. But yeah. So that's where the main parts of my work are, here on the Small Beans Network and on the Gamefully Unemployed Network, where I hang out for movie nights with both of you, all of you guys. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we love you. We love you, man. Thanks
love
for
you guys
being
too.
here.
Talking to you about films.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
And being
stupid
beans,
dumb
and
stuff.
we love our patron for patronizing us at this tier. Thank you so much. Great flick pick.
Thank you, Aaron, Defender of the Galaxy, and
That's
you,
right. That
you
was the
all,
Woo!
you all
I
can
didn't
be
forget it.
Aaron, Defender of the Galaxy, if you move on over to the patreon.com/smallbeans, pick the flick tier if it is available. We do one a month, and you can determine the movie we cover. You could even determine that we cover The Rock, which Michael hasn't seen.
Ooh.
Otherwise, we'll cover some highfalutin shit. You don't want that. You could also patronize us to gain access to the Small Beans Discord server and join us every Monday night at 6 p.m. Pacific when we do watch those aforementioned films and hang out. And Christian sometimes drops by.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mondays, 6 p.m., Monday movie nights. Abe and Michael talking shop over stupid movies. Well, not really stupid movies.
No, they're good
Sometimes
movies.
I
a lot
feel
of
they're
the time.
stupid. They're usually good movies. Yeah. But yeah, we like to do that. That's it. No, nothing else. I don't think we got anything else. The sonar. What is that? Is that a torpedo?
Submerge.
I smell a torpedo.
Podcast over.
Starboard, 59 degrees.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.